So I wanted to look also, or next, at personal change. Is it possible? Whether it's really possible or not, we know, at least according to every good piece of relationship advice you've ever heard, that you have to change yourself. No one can change you for you. And we're generally a pretty optimistic species, I think. I consider myself optimistic. I think that I can change. And again, like I said before with the group change, we've got literature that speaks of it. Only in the individual sense, slightly more optimistically. We've got Dirt Boy, which I read. We've got the book The Wild Things, which is just a sort of relatively recent addition to the canon by Dave Eggers from Where the Wild Things Are. You probably have seen the movie. Again, another movie that I recommend. The kid essentially hits bottom. In Dirt Boy, he hits bottom. He's going to get eaten by Dirt Man. He's at the very bottom, and hitting the bottom in some sphere or another seems to be what's required to hit bottom. Consider the alcoholic or someone else who's addicted to something, emotional funk, loneliness, whatever. Hitting the bottom seems to be required. What does it take to motivate? Other things that take to motivate such change? I think death, cancer, addictions. And what does it take to facilitate the actual change? That tends to get into religious issues. Of course, there's the 12-step program. Many people consider repentance a form, or at least not a form, but a mode of change. Pessimistically, again, regarding change, and that yes, change is possible, but maybe not necessarily for the better, we've got stories like Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, or sort of a modern version of that story, or a retelling of that story, The Convalescent by Jessica Anthony, which I really recommend. Really a pretty book, physically and textually. So people change. But I wonder, and particularly with things like these two books, is the change permanent? Is the change deeply rooted enough within the core of the individual that Dirt Boy is never going to get dirty again, or backslide into his old ways? Is the kid in Wild Things? I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. Is he ever going to relapse to his old ways? Is he going to overcome the emotional difficulties of his parents' separation, or is he going to have to put the wolf costume back on? Is it permanent? Is it deeply rooted enough that you're never going to go back? So is deep, core, real change really possible, or does human nature trump everything? What is human nature? I'll let you figure that on your own. But generally, I think that human nature is the thing that we're trying to overcome when we change. Do our individual natures for self-change trump everything else that we do? We can change our behavior, change the things we do. The alcoholic can stop drinking, can force himself to stop drinking. The heroin addict can technically stop, can overcome it. But there's a significant science and research that says that the addiction, once rooted, never leaves. Which in and of itself says that yes, change is possible. You can become addicted to something and change yourself fundamentally. But is it, so I guess looking at the other side, is it possible to become addicted to something that's good? Well, I kind of have to say no, because addiction by its very nature is something pejorative. It's a consuming obsession with something, and can something that consuming ever be good? Because it throws off the balance of life. If you got family, friends, people who know you or rely on you, or a job, you can't be that obsessed about anything and be healthy no matter what you're addicted to. But as far as the special change, changing the species, when the stimulus is actually sufficient to bring about such tremendous change that we adapt as a species, or even as an individual, how often does that result in extinction for a species, or in the case of an individual, in a suicide? And again, I hate to be so pessimistic, but that's kind of even the tone that the book is taking, at least at this point. Is it possible? Can it happen? Are there other alternatives to what I'm talking about? And change, again, is so painful. Can people do it? I still want to say yes. I just finished reading again recently just because I like it and it's a wonderful escape, the last of the Harry Potter books. And those of you familiar with the Harry Potter books should remember that at the very end, Voldemort is given the opportunity to change, to go back, to be re-welcomed into wizarding kind. But the only way that he can heal, to get rid of the Horcruxes, which damage his soul, much as an addiction might, is to feel remorse, to feel sorry for it. Those of you who believe in it may call this repentance. He's got to fix his soul. That's an awfully painful thing to do. Is he going to do it? Of course he's not going to do it. It's too painful. He's too excited about what he's got until, of course, he doesn't have anything at all anymore. But there are success stories, right? There are the people that do overcome addictions. There are the people that do find happiness again. And we're all happy for these people. Is it enough? Again, is that really change? That brings me to chapter 12 in East of Eden. Chapter 12 is all about arriving along the chronologically at the turn of the century. We're moving into the 1900s. We're moving into the 20th century. And of course, what more apt time do we have than at a turn of a century, or on a smaller scale, upon graduating, upon getting married, upon a particular move or getting a new job. When we come across these gateways, we expect change. We think that things are going to get different. And chapter 12, which is only 2 pages long, talks exactly about that. Chapter 12 is all about the change that we expect, because let's leave the crap behind that we've been dealing with for the last 100 years. Let's make the change. Let's expect things to be different. And I think of one particular case in point. I think of 9/11. It's been, it never seems to leave, and that's a good thing that it never leaves. We need to be reminded of it. And did it bring about a change? It was a major environmental change for humanity, at least the group of humanity in North America, or those who are against the stuff that brought it about. Did it bring about true change in humanity? I think that we all should remember, shortly after it happened, that yes, there was significant change of attitude, change of lifestyle. All kinds of things were altered in our lives as human beings because of 9/11. I think you'd be hard-pressed to defend that change collectively was permanent. How quickly we lapse back to our old ways, to our old frivolity, to our old selfishness, and go right back to the everyday lives that we lead. I hope it's not just me, but I know that I've been guilty of that same thing. I don't want to be. It happens. There are two kinds of story. Because really, when it comes down to it, every story that we read or see on TV or watch in a movie theater, on a DVD or Blu-ray or whatever else, is either optimistic or pessimistic. Every single one revolves around some sort of change. There's got to be a kinetic character in there. Somebody changes. Usually it's the protagonist, not always. Sometimes anyway, I'm not going to get into that crap. How optimistic is East of Eden? How optimistic is its author? At this point, I would say not very. Yet, going into chapter 13, I'm going to go ahead and read a paragraph and a line, because there is optimism here. Of course, we're talking about Adam. He's just done something that's going to change his life, and all the talk around it, all the atmosphere around that change says that it's going to be for the worse. But the first paragraph and one line of chapter 13. Sometimes a kind of glory lights up the mind of a man. It happens to nearly everyone. You can feel it growing or preparing like a fuse burning toward dynamite. It is a feeling in the stomach, a delight of the nerves, of the forearms. The skin tastes the air, and every deep-drawn breath is sweet. Its beginning has the pleasure of a great stretching yawn. It flashes in the brain, and the whole world glows outside your eyes. A man may have lived all of his life in the gray, and the land and trees of him dark and somber. The events, even the important ones, may have trooped by faceless and pale. And then, the glory, so that a cricket song sweetens his ear, the smell of the earth rises chanting to his nose, and dappling light under a tree blesses his eyes. Then a man pours outward, a torrent of life, and yet he is not diminished. And I guess a man's importance in the world can be measured by the quality and number of his glories. It is a lonely thing, but it relates us to the world. It is the mother of all creativeness, and it sets each man separate from all other men. I don't know how it will be in the years to come. There are monstrous changes taking place in the world, forces shaping a future whose face we do not know. That sounds like optimism to me. And those of you who know Steinbeck, he seems actually a pretty optimistic man. But he sure puts his characters through the ringer. How in the world, and this is sort of the lingering question here, how is what Adam has done to himself going to change who he is, and can it be a change for the good? Oh, by the way, if you haven't yet entered the contest, enter it. It closes tomorrow night at 9. Bye.